Now, I've been training for around 8 years, but unfortunately, I've made a lot of mistakes along my journey in the gym. And had I not made these mistakes in the past or my early years, I would have achieved my dream physique that I'm still trying to achieve a good couple of years ago. Now, these couple of mistakes that I've made that I don't want others to have to be making, I want to try and start highlighting them now. And if you're new and you haven't followed me already, drop me a follow. And I've also got an ebook guide for those that are struggling to lose fat in my bio. Anyway, number one, tracking. Now, I've never really known much about calories or tracking macros or anything like that until the start of 2023. Now, from the point where I was tracking, that's when I noticed significant amount of progress, especially regarding fat loss and even strength gains. I was always someone who struggled losing even thin layer of fat underneath my skin or anywhere in the body, noticeably at least. But ever since I started implementing tracking and calories and making sure that I'm on top of my diet and everything, just making sure I know where I'm at. That's where things started to be easily controllable, and I was very easily able to get closer to the goals that I want. Now, if you're struggling with tracking, you can use a food scale just to know how many grams of food you're putting in, and you can obviously look at the calories, which is usually found in the back of the ingredients. Now, number two is understanding macros. Now, obviously, a lot of people, including novice, would think, yeah, protein is important, which is correct, but fats is also another key thing. And a lot of people tend to forget how important it is to make sure you're consuming a good amount of fats. Now, generally, they say you should consume about zero point 0.5 grams of fat per pound of body weight, sometimes less. But if you're in a process of cutting, it's ideal if you keep it around zero point 0.5, as people underestimate how essential fat really is. Because of course, fat's very important for testosterone, and if you don't have your fats, obviously your testosterone levels are going to start completely crashing, and you're gonna struggle maintaining the muscle. Now, good fat foods tend to be found in foods such as avocados, walnuts, almonds, or even dark chocolate, so long as it's in moderation. Um, and you can even find it in milk, etc. So just make sure you're not under eating the fats, and then you'll get to where you want to be. Now, number three, and this is probably one of the most important things, so I really need you guys to pay close attention to this one: gaining muscle. A lot of people make the wrong methods. Now, what a lot of people would do is they say, "Oh, I'm going to try and gain 6 kilos in a few months, and I'm going to be much, much bigger and stronger." Unfortunately, it doesn't really make a significant difference as to how much of that specific weight would be muscle. So let's say I wanted to gain focus all let's say I wanted to focus on gaining lean muscle within a matter of months, but I don't really care how much of weight I'd be gaining, but I'd be doing it at a sensible pace and making sure I'm eating clean, only eating a tad bit over my calorie maintenance and training properly, etc. I'd be gaining the lean muscle, but my weight gain won't be crazy, crazy substantial in just a few months. But somebody else who gains, let's say, 6 to 8 kilos in a few months, likely a lot of that weight would just be fat, and that could have easily been avoidable. Unfortunately, as us naturals, there is a limit in the rate in which we can produce muscle tissue, and that we have to be patient and we got to take our time in this. So if we try and force it or rush it, all we're doing is putting on needless fat that we'd have to deal with later on by going on a long, dragged out deficit, which I doubt most of you would ever want to have to do. Number four kind of connects to number three. Now, this is your training style. Frequency is something that's pretty key. And of course, the number of sets per workout. A lot of people unfortunately make a mistake of well overdoing their volume, doing 9 sets per muscle group per session. And that can, of course, that can impact recovery. It can have a multitude of impacts. But I'd say having less sets, but also more intense working sets, is going to have a bigger determination as to how much mechanical tension and to how hard you've worked that muscle. So, let's say you were to do around about 7 to 9 sets of that muscle per week. That's decent enough, but just make sure that the first working set is the one where you train hard as you can, almost to failure, and don't try and force to do as many sets after that, thinking that the more sets you do, the more you wreck that muscle, and the more you wreck that muscle, the more it's going to grow. I used to think in the past that it was muscle tears and muscle damage that stimulate growth, and I was wrong. It's the mechanical tension. Now, if you have a lagging body part, which still connects to number four, by the way, you can specifically increase the frequency for that specific muscle. So, for example, if you train that muscle around twice a week, you can maybe increase it to 3 or even 4 times a week, so long as you got enough recovery between that muscle. For example, for me, I've always had lagging body parts in my arms. So once I start focusing on building muscle, I'm going to change my split where I can have a specific day or a third day dedicated on building my arm muscles more, and that way I can get bigger in them. Now, number five, if you do have a lagging body part, you can train it first thing. If you're not too fussed about the other muscles and you're happy with the way they're built and developed, then let's say you want to focus on the shoulders. You can actually start your workout with doing shoulders, as that will allow your shoulders to have the maximal reps, and they're not going to be as fatigued. For example, let's say you were to do a push day and you were to start off with bench press. That's already going to start tiring your shoulders down since your shoulders are already working. So once it gets to the point at the end of your workout, once you start isolating them, they're already going to be worn down. So you've already limited the full capable reps they were able to achieve. So it's better if you train them first and prioritize them more. That way you provide them the maximal reps you're able to do. So it can allow you to slowly increase strength in them over time. Now, number six, eating nutrient-dense foods. Now, this will help you, especially for people who are on a deficit. If you're eating the wrong foods, eating foods just to satisfy your sweet tooth, and I think you know the types of foods I'm on about, then you're not really going to get that far, because these types of foods tend to have no nutrients whatsoever, no vitamins, no minerals, just excess refined sugar. It just gives you a false sense of dopamine, makes you want to scran more of it and go well above your calories, and it can very easily undo your deficit. So you don't want to do that. What you want to do is you want to eat nutrient-dense, satiating foods that will help your body. A lot of people tend to underestimate how fulfilling it is to get all your micronutrients sorted. And on top of that, once you sort out your micronutrients and start eating nutrient-dense foods, you'll feel very satiated, and you'll also help your body with multiple things such as recovery, joint function, sleeping properly, etc. Now, number seven, you need to know your hormones, man. You need to be able to get good sleep, especially. Sleep is something that I think is something people really do not talk about, man. We need to make sure that we get enough sleep, a good 8 hours, because if you are not getting good sleep, we're going to impact our recovery. The times when we sleep is during times when our growth hormone is working a lot more, and there's a lot of muscle protein synthesis that occurs to help with our muscles recovering. And if we don't do that, then we're impacting our muscle recovery. This can impact our strength increases, and it can even indirectly lead to a cortisol increase. So that can make it even worse for your muscle loss if you're on a deficit. So you want to make sure you're getting good sleep. A misconception a lot of people tend to hold is that they always seem to assume that insulin is just the enemy. Insulin has no beneficial purpose, but it does, you know? And it ultimately depends on your goal. If you're somebody, for example, who wants to focus on gaining muscle, then insulin may not necessarily be such a bad thing. Insulin is actually an anabolic hormone, which means it actually has muscle sparing effects. So if you were to slightly get your insulin to go up even a little bit, then there's nothing wrong with that. Obviously, it's from the right foods. You don't want to be eating the wrong types of sugary foods. And I think you know exactly what foods I'm referring to. But I'm talking about the right carbohydrates. And it doesn't even have to be carbohydrates. Any kind of meal technically will increase your insulin. But just bear in mind, insulin actually has muscle sparing effects. And ultimately, it can help you with muscle preservation. Whilst, yes, it does indirectly increase fat storage and make it harder for your body to target fat when on a deficit, that doesn't mean it's always bad. It definitely has beneficial purposes. Now, when it comes to losing fat, yes, you don't want to be needlessly blasting your insulin constantly by eating sugary foods all day and carelessly snacking. Definitely keep your insulin levels at a minimal and use your carbohydrates at the right time. So use your carbohydrates mainly before you're about to work out. But all I can say is you just need to know the hormones, especially hormones like cortisol and insulin, learn them better and understand how to use them at the right time. Obviously, cortisol, you don't want to be increasing your cortisol needlessly, and you can tackle that by making sure you sleep properly, you're not overly stressed, and you're eating the right foods as well.